It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. Welcome to Tubb Talk Live. I'm Richard Tubb here at home in the studio, garage in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. Now, in this live show, I interview wildly successful experts in the managed service provider industry to get them to share their tips and tools for growing your IT business. We're interactive today, so if you're joining us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or elsewhere, please let us know where you are joining us from, and I will make sure to give you a shout out. And if you've got any questions or thoughts you'd like to share with our guests today, fire them over in the comments. We're monitoring all the channels for your feedback, and I'm going to pause regularly to ask your questions and, of course, give you a name check. So, on to our main event for today, and I'm very excited to be joined by our guests, Bradley Munday and Jason Kemsley of Uptime. Now, long-time listeners to my Tubb Talk podcast will be very familiar with Brad and Jason, but if you've not come across their work before, they are my go-to guys for all things help desk, all things network operations center NOC, all things outsourcing and partnering. And today, we're going to be discussing the emerging managed service provider model, a new type of managed service provider that outsources operations to accelerate growth and scalability. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Bradley and Jason, welcome to Tubb Talk Live.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. It's live. Be careful.
It's live. So, what do they say on the TV? Mind your language. Please do not swear.
We'll do our very best, but it's been a long week.
It has been a long week. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a bit, exactly why it's been a long week. But Jason, let me start with you. So I gave a little bit of overview of Uptime, but for anybody who's not familiar with Uptime, who are you and what do you do to help manage service providers?
In a nutshell, Uptime provides outsourcing assistance to partners around the world, partners being MSPs. We're channel only, white labeled. We do the help desk, the NOC, or offshore engineering, if that's what you would like to delve into. And ultimately, we want to be able to help you with your operational needs and problems. So depending on the solution, depends on the scenario you're trying to fix and what fits best. We have the onshore help desk 24/7, as well as other options depending on what scenario you find yourself in, all with coming back to that partner centricity in mind and trying to be a good, honest vendor that does what they say they're going to do and is held accountable by the industry.
You certainly do. Uptime have got a great reputation. I'm a raving fan, as I know lots of people joining today are. But we're not here specifically to talk about Uptime today. Of course, there's going to be bits about that. Bradley, let's talk about the emerging MSP model that I alluded to earlier. A new type of managed service provider that outsource operations to accelerate growth and scalability. Tell us a little bit more about that concept.
So MSPs have been outsourcing for a good decade now. I would have said it's become more and more popular. But what we're seeing people that sold their MSP and they're looking to go around again, or we're seeing people that aren't your traditional person to start an MSP. They're not technical. Maybe they come from a sales background, that kind of thing. Outsourcing now enables them to spin up and not have the headache of managing a technical team that maybe is not their level of expertise, but scale very, very quickly. And so that's what we're seeing, those type of people come into the market, but also people being much more open around their outsourcing. So I guess before the days of GDPR and things, outsourcers were kept very, very hidden. They weren't really talked about. It was white labeled. Now what we're seeing is the white labeled service is maintained. So we're still working under people's brands, but they're being very open with their customers and almost creating a bit of distance from the service delivery with their customers. And that means that they're very agnostic about problems and things. There's no emotion when someone says, hey, something didn't go quite right, maybe. There's not the emotion around the need to defend. They can really sit and look objectively about the problem. And it creates much greater rapport with their customers. And so I think a combination of all these things, with the scale, with the relationships they're creating with their customers, they are hyper account managing them. They're creating a really, really strong MSP.
Richard, if I may just add one thing there, because
always go for it.
We're going to come on to some other information a little bit later about what's going on next week. But we were looking at some stats yesterday to quantify this. We think conservatively, because it's very difficult to go back and calculate, about 1 in 20 to 1 in 25 leads we received were in this new model last year, January to December. It's quite a high number, and it was very difficult because they weren't necessarily as transparent about what they're doing.
Yeah.
This year, 1 in 6, 1 in 7 meet the criteria Brad has just mentioned. And I just wanted to quantify how much it is becoming a thing, just so it's not a vendor finger in the air type. There's evidence behind this as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that because this is not a theoretical model, is it, of emerging managed service providers? This, what we're talking about today is based on what you are seeing in the market, and Uptime, in the number of years that you've been in business, you've always attracted the more progressive managed service providers. So yeah, what do those MSPs, Jason, if I put you on the spot for a moment, what do those MSPs look like in terms of size, geography, the type of clients they work with, that type of thing?
Typically, geography, size, etc., they're not too dissimilar size-wise in the early days as a normal MSP. Couple of people, maybe up to 5. But as they scale, that number doesn't grow as quickly as it would with another MSP. So you could get a £2 million new breed, to use that term, that is 3-4 individuals, because they have maybe a compliance company they work with in their customers. Maybe they have a cybersecurity company, a help desk company, and so on and so forth. So they're not adding necessarily to their headcount as they add services. They're adding customers they need to sit at board level with or hyper account manage, and so they don't scale at the same pace. They don't need the same number of resources as they scale. But geography wise and vertical wise, they're much similar to traditional MSPs in that they might focus on legal, they might focus on design. It's where the strengths of those individuals that usually found it start. We typically see the founder, the person that is the inception of that company. They'll have some ties into a certain vertical, and so they typically expand into that one. But from the outside in the early days, they look and feel like a traditional. But as they hyperscale, as they are able to do, and we've seen so many times, it's when they start hitting that 1 million, 2 million, maybe an MSP would be 10 to 15 bodies at 1 million.
Yeah.
This new breed are typically 3-4.
That's incredible. Brad, I've got to ask you, you're a student of the game, as Jason is, of course, but anybody who follows your LinkedIn updates and things, you share a great deal of in-depth information about the business of managed services. Jason shared a little bit about the emerging MSPs that you were coming across. Did you have an inkling this was going to happen? Or did you see it before it happened? Or did it take you by surprise?
What a question. I think we see these people, especially people going round again. They might have been tech founders, the first MSP that they ran, but business acumen is something that grows over time, and they're not looking to do the same thing again. They're not looking to grow a team for the sake of growing a team, for the kudos of, I've got a team that's 15 individuals strong and that sort of stuff. They're really just interested in the key metrics that show that they've got a healthy, successful business. I think that's the difference. But I don't think we were necessarily expecting to see such a growth in this way. But the moment we started seeing people be more open around why they're using an outsourcer and why that's good for the customer, I think we saw that there was potential for hyperscale of those people for sure, because they just remove the restrictions of having to go and find that next body to facilitate the growth.
Yeah,
I think Brad's being too humble there, Richard. I think we discussed this 5 years ago, but we both thought we might be a bit crazy and had no evidence that it could be a thing. I remember Brad having the conversation with me about the idea, but I think it was just a gut feel with no evidence and another, maybe this is a thing and it's going to happen. The data is now showing it really is.
I find it fascinating. So many people know I'm a former MSP owner myself. I was big on outsourcing, huge advocate of strategic alliances and things like that. After I sold the business, Jason. I, spoke to lots of other MSPs who were like, "Oh, well, you sold the business. How did that go?" and things. And I always ended up having the conversation with them. "Oh, where do you want to get with your business before you exit?" And picking up on what Brad said, they would typically say something like, "Oh, we want to get to £1 million, or I want to get to like 50 people, or some sort of arbitrary number." So it's really interesting to me that what you're seeing is MSP owners pretty much sort of overriding the ego piece there and saying, actually, we want a highly profitable business and we want as low overheads as possible, without sort of just having a business that's, for vanity. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying there?
It absolutely does. It's me and the beauty of being in a partnership, me and Brad, with what we do is we have so many conversations Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday, over the past 15 years. And we've talked a lot about this. Sometimes we see MSPs where we see that the ego is possibly the limiting factor, or whatever it may be in their story. We're starting to see that drop. I think everyone is aware a more mature MSP market requires a more mature MSP owner and vendors. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see individuals really start to push their leadership into a new area. We're seeing the organizations that MSPs are working with pushing us to more governance, compliance, security, and holding us to higher standards. And so it is making us all step away slowly from that day to day. It would just be great if we, as an industry, drove some of that rather than maybe being pushed there by customers, etc. I actually we were doing a little bit on this the other week, and we were looking at some stats, and I came across Google, and I never knew, certainly, that Google have more outsourced staff than they do internal. Blew my mind. I couldn't believe it at first, and I've been doing outsourcing for 15 years. But it really, when you start looking around the world and more mature areas of the market, this is a thing that is just not taboo. It's not a question. It's a norm used to deliver business outcomes. It's only our industry that maybe we're just reaching this point, and long may it continue, because I think all the while outsourcing and not necessarily just outsourcing, everything that a mature market uses and needs is being discussed. It means that the future is bright for all of us.
Yeah. And you and I have, all three of us have discussed, typically over a glass of wine or something, that idea that the word outsourcing has got a little bit of a connotation to it, and perhaps a negative connotation in some circles as well. So I'm intrigued. We're live and interactive today. So if you've got any thoughts, is it outsourcing? Is it partnerships? What would you call it as a managed service provider? Use the comments to give us your feedback and questions for Brad and Jason on anything managed services or outsourcing / whatever word you would like to use. I'll make sure to pause often and ask your questions. But Jason, I'm going to turn back to you again. Bradley has talked about where he sees managed service going. I saw your amazing presentation stateside a few weeks ago at CompTIA ChannelCon in Atlanta, Georgia. It was on the future of help desk. I thought it was incredibly thought-provoking. So, for the benefit of the audience, what do you think the future will hold for MSP help desks, for IT help desks as a whole?
I'm glad you clarified ask anything in MSP, Richard, so thank you. I firstly loved giving that presentation. It was an environment that was conducive of sort of share these predictions, etc., which was great. We're in a very luxury position in that we do get to see lots of things from an amalgamation of places, and so talking on these topics is something we're very keen on doing, because we need to improve the industry and help the industry move forward. When we look at where the help desk is heading, the easiest way I could explain it, and it's a crude way of doing so, is take a look at the healthcare model in the UK. And the way I would describe the healthcare model, 10 years ago, I call the doctors, I get through to a receptionist, they book an appointment with the doctor. Now, when I call, the receptionist tries to diagnose me and then choose if they put me with a healthcare assistant, a nurse, a triage person, or a doctor. What we're seeing is, as this race to the bottom, this commoditization happens, we have to use lower paid sadly, resources to achieve some of the tasks that maybe would have sat with the more expensive resources once upon a time. So tooling, AI, etc., all complements that. But the key thing from that presentation, two things. The second line role we've talked about for quite a while is starting to be removed from a help desk. Doesn't mean the individuals are removed, but maybe they move up or whatever it may be. But that second line role now typically is actually delivered by the vendor. So when you have a 365 issue, as an example, there's only so much you can do in the GUI, and then you go and log it with Microsoft for second line assistance and help. So that second line role, as we get more and more in bed with some of these tools, is becoming less and less necessary. And then the second thing is we've seen ahead of first line, the creation or the future creation of this customer service-esque role. That's an individual that might use a chatbot. They might answer the phones. They might keep cases up to date or comms high. They might use an AI tool to provide some recommendations. They might kick off a robotic process automation. But that person is hyper-focused on customer service and customer success, and not necessarily technically skilled. The reason I think that's such an important thing for us all to think about, certainly for ourselves, we already sort of have been down this path for a few years, but many MSPs do not yet know or have experience with hiring non-technical individuals. And it is a different type of person. It's a different type of management style. Typically, it's a different type of motivation that they have. And so thinking about it ahead of time allows us just to create some success in those areas when they do come up.
And very timely, there's a question coming in here. Laura asks, how should MSPs balance technical skills and customer service as help desk evolve? So that's pretty much related to what you were just talking about there, Jason. The concept, the idea of not necessarily hiring for technical first. Tell us a little bit more about that. I'll throw it open to either of you, whoever wants to take that question.
Brad?
It's always going to be a difficult balance, right? And I think it's always been a balance between first, second, third. We've always had how do we know what tickets are going to come in, and I think tracking escalation. So we've done a few presentations around using automation within your PSAs, having user-defined fields, UDFs, that allow you to, via a workflow, when maybe a ticket moves from concierge to first line to second line, whatever it might be, you're tracking that escalation, and it allows you to then use the data to make those decisions. That's, I think, how you get best balance, is to make sure that you're tracking how your help desk works. When you start seeing too many escalations, you need more people that are going to do triage or concierge, whatever you want to call those new people that we're seeing in the organizations. And it allows you to get better balance. You obviously want things to be solved quickly for your customers, and you want to make sure you've got as many of the entry level positions as you can, because it obviously massively improves your bottom line as well. So I would use UDFs to make sure you've got that balance.
And I would just add there, Richard, I wonder, and this is an on the spot thought, I wonder if we're heading towards a world where maybe we end up in a place where we have a customer service agent and a tech assigned to every ticket. And what I mean by that is a customer service individual is hyper focused on, is the person having a good success? They have KPIs that match that. And so are we moving towards a world, we see it in enterprise slightly, if I call my bank or I go on live chat, I get an individual that is good at customer comms, etc., but maybe doesn't have the knowledge I need when my issue gets a bit more in depth. But they typically still own it even when it goes to that person in depth, because they want to hold them to account internally, get it reassigned if they need to, etc. I wonder if we're going to see more and more of that. I know in the US, following that presentation, I was talking to some MSPs, and they have a customer service individual that owns the ticket and then holds the text to account internally. I wonder if that's something we're going to start seeing more and more of as we go down this path.
I love that concept. And I was having a conversation with an MSP yesterday about something we historically used to call dispatchers. So if you come across that concept, it's the idea of somebody who answers the help desk calls and actually then delegates the tickets to various engineers. But part of the role of the dispatcher historically was also to be an advocate for the clients. So in other words, to chivvy the engineer, to make sure that things are happening. And so those MSPs that I know that have put a dispatcher in place have got high levels of sort of customer service feedback, positive feedback, because the client feels as though they've got somebody almost fighting for them on the side of the help desk. So do you think that's what we're talking about here is an evolution of that sort of model?
I think so. Brad said to me a long time ago, I think it was a leadership or an all hands, and he said something about, if it's going to take us 20 minutes, we just need to nail the comms and set expectations with the customer so that they know what to expect and they have a good experience. It's very similar to anything in life. If you're just told, hey, there's a problem here, I've got it in hand, I'm owning it for you, but it's going to take me 30 minutes. That can still deliver, even though not an ideal ticket, a great CSAT or a great outcome, despite maybe it not being as easy as it first looked. And so, I do think that is absolutely pivotal. It doesn't matter if it's the world's most complex ticket. It doesn't matter how in the weeds it is. If we keep comms high and we ultimately fulfill human traits, which is like someone cares about what I'm going through and they're there to help, then can there ever be a failure as such that causes you to lose a customer?
Yeah. Many years ago, I wrote a blog article for Tubb called It's All About Communication. And I made the analogy, bear with me on this one, I made the analogy that running an MSP business was a lot like the local police force, in that you never get in touch with them really as a consumer, as a member of the public, or as a client of an MSP. You rarely get in touch with the MSP to say, great job, well done. You only tend to get in touch when something's gone wrong, don't you? And so communication is a huge, challenge, because if everything's going swimmingly, I mean, when's the last time that you picked up the phone to your local police force, Bradley, and said, hey, just wanted to say good job, guys, because I've not been broken into. My house has not been broken into overnight. Really good job. Appreciate it. It doesn't happen,
right.
does it? So
No,
that concept of communication is paramount. Yeah.
It is. It's as a tech, it's almost a little bit sad for me that as a market we've decided to go down this route of, let's stop trying to drive home communication skills to our technical people, and let's just put in someone that does just the communication piece, and then they can almost back it off to the technical people. I think a lot of our success is down to the fact that we've managed to, through our onboarding, through our culture, etc., we've managed to and still continue to bring people in with great communication skills that you then skill up and give technical skills to, rather than, I guess, succumbing to the idea of technical people are just not going to be good at communication. I think if you look hard enough and you work hard enough to train these people, everyone's capable of communicating well. You just need to make sure that you make it clear as to why. I think that's a bit that's missing. Often we're not making it clear to our people why communication is important. They don't get why, hey, I'm working on it anyway. So why does me sending an email saying that I'm working on it, why does that make any difference to the end customer? And once you see why, that they don't know that you're working on it unless you tell them. It's simple things, but that really makes a difference to people going, oh yeah, it might be simple, but I get it now. And I want my end customer to think that I'm doing a great job. So, yeah, I don't think we as an organization are ready to succumb to the idea. We'll continue to train good people that have good communication and give them the tech. And I implore MSPs to do it as well.
Yeah, we'll go back to this subject. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry,
Richard,
please.
The PR team have just messaged me and they said, thank you, Brad, for not commenting on your thoughts on the police force.
Well done, Bradley. Well, now that you've thrown that one out to Bradley, I'm going to throw one to you. We've had a question come in, which I think is really interesting, and it's to do with your fears earlier. You said, asking the audience to ask us anything about managed service outsourcing. That's quite a wide scope. So here's the question, and forgive me, I can't pick up who it was from, but it says, talking about outsourcing, how much B2B sales should be outsourced for MSPs earning more than $800,000, pounds, euros, whatever? When do you believe MSP founders should have in-house salespeople? And Jason, I'll put you on the spot with that one. When do you think, the line between outsourcing sales and in-house sales, when does that change in your experience?
Let me gather my thought. Let me first say, I think one of the things we do the worst in this industry, and this might upset some people, I apologize, is we almost need to all become sales machines as much as possible from day one. I think it's very easy for us all to fall back to tech, myself and Brad included. It's a happy place, a safe place. But from day one, sales is, if you think of the funnel, excuse the pun, everything starts from sales. If you have predictable sales, you have predictable hiring or predictable outsourcing, you have predictable marketing and so on. So I think at any level, we should, I see many people on Reddit and lots of places concerned about their tech stack from day one. The first thing I would be worried about right now is, have I got a reliable, consistent, measurable, consistent sales funnel that I can action? And I would do that regardless of size. In regards to outsourcing, I don't know if there's necessarily a preference to outsourcing sales or not outsourcing, or outsourcing marketing and not. I think it comes down to your values and what you want to do as a business. What I would suggest is, in every area of your business, what the relevant alternative is outsourced. So, for example, I've got payroll or finance. What would that look like outsourced? I have marketing. What would that look like outsourced? Because whilst you may not want to use them right now, knowing what is possible means at points of contention, staff loss, etc., you can very easily jump into them rather than backpedaling. So I would encourage at any size to just know your available options. There are lots of honest vendors out there that will not apply sales pressure and just give you, this is what it looks like when the time comes. But I would implore everyone to at least know what is available to them as and when that problem arises. And then when the problem does arise, or you need to jump into sales, marketing, outsource tech, whatever it may be, looking at it through an outcome perspective and not an emotional perspective. So I'm not answering your question in terms of size necessarily, because every business is different, but from day one, and I would know what's available to you in each area as soon as possible, because it will usually fill you with ideas as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I think it was really well phrased by the person who asked the question there. Because typically, if I get asked the question, should I be outsourcing sales and that, I'll say absolutely not. Because what I see many nimble MSPs try almost to abdicate responsibility for sales by outsourcing it. And we know from the MSPs that we've worked with over many, many years, often 9 times out of 10, the most enthusiastic salesperson for a business is the manager owner, isn't it? The question was specifically above $800,000. So thank you for addressing that. Bradley, I'm going to ask a question here. I don't think we can move on until we've discussed the dreaded buzzword that's around at the moment, AI, artificial intelligence. So I don't think we can move on until we've discussed the part artificial intelligence will play in the future of managed services. So let's talk about, rather than something hazy and that, let's talk about what you actually need to get right before AI, before the automation that you talked about a little bit there. How are you advising MSPs to proceed with this?
So the moment that AI gets mentioned, my first thing is stop. What we're in danger of here is going after the new and shiny, right? Everyone's marketing their products as having AI in them to try and draw you towards them. I would say let's stop looking to implement AI within our business. But let's go back to looking at our business problems that we're trying to solve. So understand where you're heading, understand the problems that are stopping you from getting there, and then review, is there an AI solution to this? Can I automate? Can I use machine learning, some AI in there to make this process more efficient, better, easier? And that might be any number of things. It might be we just need some more efficiency. We're not making enough on the bottom line, so we need to make our processes more efficient. Number one, let's make sure our processes are documented so that we can actually iterate through those processes and then begin to say, right, we need a product here to help us do this better. It might be that we're seeing errors in a particular area. So again, I encourage flagging tickets that didn't go quite as planned, be that in a spreadsheet, be it in your PSA tool, doesn't really matter. And then we can begin to look for trends, and then we can look for tooling that might help us resolve those trends and stop us making those errors in the first place. But I think it needs to be that way around. It needs to be business problem and then have an AI first approach to the business problem, rather than going out and just buying tools because they've got AI in them. And it continues to be a problem that we see. We stand in lots and lots of vendor halls, and we'll have partners come around, prospects come around going, I've just bought a bunch of new stuff. Why did you buy that stuff? Well, it was new and shiny and I got carried away. But I pressed the go button now, right? And don't really know what they're solving. It just looked cool. So you can save a lot of time by taking a slightly different approach.
I'm intrigued. Yeah, go ahead, Jason. I was going to say, I've got something to say about artificial intelligence, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
I was going to make a bold statement with both of you here to protect me should there be any repercussions. I think as an industry, we are part of the problem. And not many people get to see this, so I'm going to share a quick behind the scenes. If we get asked to do a speech at a particular conference session, etc., and we put AI in the title, it's almost guaranteed to be accepted. If you try and do anything else, typically it's a bit harder to get it in. I think as an industry, we need to lead the customers. Let's calm down a little bit. There's some fundamentals we need to get in line first, and then we can jump into the AI journey. But we're almost running away when AI is not. It's not where the hype would suggest it is just yet. From what I would suspect, we're still seeing there's lots of RPA tools that are now just gaining lots and lots of traction, which is great, but not AI tools as such. So I think it's quite important that we as an industry hold ourselves to account and just try and just curb this enthusiasm a little bit. We all want to be skilled up, we all want to be knowledgeable, but we should be encouraging our customers to nail the fundamentals, because the minute we jump in with AI, we're almost removing important time where we should have been talking about cybersecurity, getting their stack connected, and all of the other things that we haven't quite maybe nailed just yet.
Yeah, I will actually share again behind the scenes here. There's a number of vendor partners who I do advisory work for, and some of them have dropped promoting the AI aspect of their software. They've taken the AI out of the title of their business name, and they're doing that specifically because what Brad was saying earlier on, it's become this thing, hasn't it? It's like, AI this, AI that, AI the other, and there is a lot of dross out there. There really is at the moment, and so these vendors don't want to be get caught, up in the big rush of people saying, "Oh, it's AI, you've got to check it." So AI, as far as I'm concerned, is part of business growth, isn't it? But if you don't use AI effectively within your business, what is the point there? And we're seeing a lot of MSPs rush to use these shiny tools and stuff, and really they're missing out on the basic stuff that we've talked about: communication, customer advocacy, and things of that nature. So yeah, it's a fascinating time to be alive and be in the industry and checking these things out. We are live and interactive today, so use the comments box to give us your feedback and questions for Brad and Jason. Okay, let me throw a question out to you both. We're going to be talking about these topics a lot more very soon at Uptime's first ever conference, Uptime Live, on September the 17th, 2024 in London, just next week. So tell us, where did Uptime Live come from? What is it all about?
So Uptime Live it's a business show for MSPs. It's not more of your traditional MSP show for MSPs. So we've completely sort of dropped tech from the agenda. We're talking about how we grow as business people, and it's almost a combination. We've been running Uptime now for 15 years plus, and it's that culmination of all the things that we've spent many years learning. And there were key pivotal points, I think, where we went, oh, this thing, it propels us to the next level. And so we brought all of that together to really have a day of focus on how you can speed up, I guess, growing as a business person to propel your MSP. But also, I think importantly, we're going to talk about thinking about the level that you want to be at. I think as an industry, we're all about growth. It's what's spoken about at every turn, but not everyone wants to grow to be 10 million, 30 million. Actually, some people are quite happy running a lifestyle business. Maybe they've approached £1 million turnover, £1.5 million, and actually that allows them to live the lifestyle that they want to live, and they don't want to push through to do any more than that. I worry that the industry pulls people along to things that they don't want to be in, and that's where we get burnout and things like that. So it's an entire day of, hey, let's first establish where we want to be and the level that we want to play at, and then how do we use the tools to achieve that goal throughout the rest of the day.
And Jason, you and I have been to a lot of events over the years, some of them great, some of them lesser great. But all I know from my insight into the event industry, it is hard work putting these sort of events together. So when you were alluding to, all the effort you've been putting in for next week, but where did the idea for Uptime Live come from?
Absolutely right. It is a lot of effort that the whole team have put into this, and when we go back to why, two things. Ultimately, when we go to these shows, we did start to feel like the value was diminishing for MSPs, and so we did see an opportunity, albeit that was not enough at the time for us to take a huge financial punt, because they are expensive. But then when we also considered we're scaling, and we can't just do a small impromptu meetup to meet with our partners, etc., like we may have once done before. What we need to do is now larger, more grander. Our messaging, our sharing of information is at a larger scale. So the two really came together in a perfect harmony, and we saw, right, if we'd done an event, not only could we fix this problem we're seeing with events in general, and hearing, I may add, but also we can communicate with our partners. We can get a lot of our team out there so that they can meet these partners they're working with daily, etc. And so it kind of blended to be a perfect combination. And on this call, the two commitments we can absolutely make for those that are attending or are still to sign up. There's very few tickets left, single digit now. Absolutely, I couldn't tell you the amount of work has gone into this to try and make it the best day possible, and I really do think it will be. And it is a not-for-profit event. Not a penny is being made in Uptime's name or any name for this. Everything has gone back into making it a good event. Brad might not necessarily think this is a good thing to share, but last week we found ourselves with a small amount of money from that we weren't expecting. And so we've kitted out part of the room with arcade machines, etc. And it's a silly thing, but every penny has been spent on something in the sessions, the event, the drinks afterwards, whatever it may be, to make sure maximum value goes back to the attendee.
Man alive, it's not a silly thing. You drop that bombshell now. You realise I'm sitting here in the studio garage, surrounded by arcade machines, just off camera either side.
I didn't.
So did you not know that? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I've got Ataris, I've got Commodores, I've got all sorts. So I want to know more about this, but perhaps that's not the main selling feature of Uptime Live here. So don't let my enthusiasm overtake us. But all joking aside, Brad, you shared the list of speakers that you've got for Uptime Live next week on September 17th in London. And there's a lot of names there that I'd not heard of before, but you have got great expectations of as being, wonderful speakers that the managed service provider industry's not heard from before. So tell us a little bit about the speakers and, what the thought process there was.
So the thought process was around maybe a little bit of event fatigue happening in the space. And it was about doing something different and providing new value. We didn't want to just bring on the same people we've seen before in the space talking about the same subjects. So we went out and we found people that, again, going back to what were the key things within our business that allowed us to accelerate. And we went and found people that could talk on those subjects. Some of them, happy coincidence, ran MSPs. We've got Jason Green from EOS Worldwide talking around business frameworks. Actually, in a previous life, ran an MSP. So there's a happy coincidence there. We've got M&A pieces in there as well. We've still got that going on in the space, right? People that are looking to sell, people that are looking to buy, but that market's changing. So we've got the chairman of Air IT coming in to talk on that subject as well. So lots of new people. We've got a new breed MSP that's going to be talking about how their business looks and how they've been able to scale. Myself and Jason have spoken a lot on the subject, but we've never really pulled one of these people from our customer base to have them speak on it. So looking forward to have that shared as well.
Yeah. What about the keynote speaker? Come on, Jason, tell us about this. We're allowed to talk about this, aren't we? It's too late now. I've just mentioned it.
We had the pleasure of a call with Levi Roots. For anyone that doesn't know, best known for his Dragon's Den. He was on The Chase a couple of weeks ago. Me and Brad were watching. We had the pleasure of a call with him. I think it was 2-3 weeks ago now. And let me assure people, he is energetic. In just 20-25 minutes, I would say inspirational. We left the call. And me and Brad immediately spoke and the team and said, what a great choice we've made there, because you don't get to necessarily meet them before you choose them. And I think it's going to be a fantastic choice. It's an intentional choice. It's a day of content, education, leadership, etc., business strategy. And then with a goal of the keynote to inspire us all to take away what we've heard, because an event's only good if you take things away from it. And so there may be some surprises with that. Not quite sure just yet, but it is a session which, if I maybe a brave commitment, if someone can sit in that room for the keynote and not smile at any point listening to this man, his story, and what he's been able to do, then your drinks are on me for the rest of the evening, because he's a wonderful, wonderful chap.
You're going big on that. So, yeah. I mean, you had me arcade machines, but Levi Roots as well. There we go. So yeah, absolutely. Uptime Live takes place in London next week, as we are live now. If you're listening to this on the recording, hello from the past. Takes place in London. Tickets still available. Looks like it's going to be an amazing event as well. We're coming towards the end, so if you've got any questions for Jason or Brad, get in now. Please don't hold your silence, and I'll pause and ask them. But we've had an interesting question come in here. Let me see if I can paraphrase it. I'm not sure my small clients would accept me outsourcing. What are the common objections the Uptime team here to MSPs outsourcing, and how do you respond to those objections? I'll throw it open to either of you.
So I think one of the questions that we get is around smaller clients is, I've got a historic customer base that wouldn't work commercially if I were to outsource them. I think the way we always combat this is there's a couple of things that we can do to get into the weeds a little bit. Is there's ways actually commercially you can make that work. Maybe you just keep those older clients in-house that don't work commercially. But I think the biggest focus there is, are those, yes, you've been with them a long time, there's relationships there, but is it time to either say goodbye to those clients or get them on something that is more commercially viable to you? I think we all go through that, right? When you start an MSP, you pick up you pick up any business you can, right? Certainly that's something I relate to. As when we founded our business, it was, hey, anyone that wants some support, doesn't really matter what you look like, we'll provide it. But it doesn't work longer term. You need to make sure that you've you work out what's the smallest customer you can commercially look after. They tend to be noisy, and they tend to be least favored customers as you move on. So I guess having a look at whether they're right for you as a business would be the first thing. But otherwise, establish a way forwards to grow your team and grow your business with outsourcing. But you could always leave those smaller customers being handled as they are currently.
Interesting. Jason, what type of MSPs have you found over the past few years have been most common to approach Uptime to partner with you? Is there a sort of size or a geography or a type of MSP?
Really, in the last couple of years, it is becoming more main market. So we see a wide variety. What we do see is a commonality in the individual that is triggered it or started it, and it is they're trying to reach something, and they're currently having obstacles in their way that they can't overcome. Those individuals usually are, not a popular opinion, but able to push their ego to one side. They're focused on business outcomes because maybe they've just been on the wheel for a very long time and are willing now to try something new. Or, and it is a nerve-wracking topic, they've spoken to someone, they've been in a peer group or something similar and seen success, and so now they're trying to imitate that in some way, shape, or form. I just pulled down this book. It's a book that actually Brad made me read years and years ago, Eat Their Lunch. And I was on the question you just got asked, I was going to ask the individual, have a think about where your customer, if you don't think your customer is going to accept it, or maybe have a conversation about it, have a think to yourself about where your customer currently has your relationship with them. What level is it currently at? And the reason I say that, the early levels are they look at you as a product or service. The level 3 is business results and business outcomes, and then the level 4, the level we're all trying to get to, is they see you as a strategic partner. If you are at strategic partner level, you should be able to have a conversation with them of, here are the positives, here are the negatives, and this is typically what we see. This is what it will allow us to do by doing such a move. So if I was you, I would, and it's an open conversation. It's a conversation we'll happily have with you because accountability doesn't get lost when you use an outsourcer. But with that particular customer, hey, I was looking into this model. Here's the negatives. It's not my team. It's not me. Here's the positives. It will mean we can do more high level, important work for you to drive real business change and outcomes. We'll be able to hold this company to account in a more traditional fashion, and we will still provide all the communication, still be your point of contact, and can still help if needed. When you get to that high level of relationship and you can have those conversations, there may be a legitimate reason that means it doesn't work, and that's okay. What we're suggesting is it's just worth having the conversation because it does allow you to elevate your relationship with them and move into, right, our high focus areas are, how do we move the needle in your business? How do we prepare for your roadmap in 3 years? How do we integrate all your tooling, etc., etc.? So that's just what I would add into that question as well.
Yeah, and what was that book again, Jason? We're big fans of. We've almost got like a book club going here on Tubb Talk. So tell us more. Eat Their Lunch by
Anthony. How do you pronounce it, Brad? Do you know how to pronounce the surname?
No, I was hoping you weren't going to ask. I saw it.
Iannarino.
Eat Their Lunch by Anthony Iannarino. We'll go with that.
This book came about because in the early years of Uptime, we were trying to. We were in a market that was dominated by one player, and that player had really good, really good retention despite not necessarily good service, and so we had to really skill up on how to create high levels of relationships, and it ended up becoming a core value of ours. Is we want to have authenticity, good relationships, good partners, etc. But it's something I would encourage people to do with their customers because it should allow you to at least have that conversation, and then if nothing changes, that's okay. But it allows you to have those exploratory conversations with them with the end goal in mind for both businesses.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to rewind a little bit. The question about from I believe it was a nimble MSP saying, I'm not sure my clients would accept this. To add to what Jason and Brad have already said about it, in my experience, as a nimble MSP myself back in the day, don't make the assumption that clients won't accept outsourced services, because quite often we project and go, oh, my clients would never accept that. But have you asked them? Go ahead and have that conversation and be open and honest about it. And again, I speak as one of the UK's first MSPs that did partner up with an outsourcing company like Uptime sort of 15, 20 years ago to do that type of work. And our clients did not bat an eyelid, and they were all small business clients. So just wanted to throw that out there as well, guys. So we got another question come in here, and again, forgive me, I haven't got the name with it. Would you believe that outsourcing will become the norm as opposed to a nice to have in the next 5 years to keep MSPs lean and reduce costs? Crystal ball shout.
Over to you, Brad, first.
I think there's possibly a misconception. Outsourcing isn't just to reduce costs, right? It's a way to increasing and scale quickly. So I think we will continue to see a divide, and that's why we talk so passionately around this new breed of MSP. It's not because the value to a traditional MSP. We're still seeing technical people found MSPs, right? They're not going away, and our concern is that traditional MSP that is coming at it from a tech point of view is going to try and build a team, which might be a slower approach, doesn't necessarily have the sales and marketing experience that the new breed of MSP has. But combined with the sales and marketing efforts and the fact that they can scale quickly by using an outsourcer, we really talk about it because we're worried about the threat that provides to the more traditional MSP. The background that we came from, we're both techs at heart, so we talk about that in a very to look out for, if you like, the traditional tech starting a business. We don't want them to be left behind. So I would like to think that it's going to become more and more popular and almost be the norm in 5 years' time. However, I still think we're going to see technical people starting MSPs and not necessarily wanting to let go of the reins. So I guess to bring it all together, no, I don't believe it will be the norm. I think we'll get to maybe 50-50 split.
Jason, you've got to have an opinion on this. Let's put you on the spot here.
It's a great question, and one actually never been asked. So thank you. I don't believe it is necessarily going to be the norm. I would concur with Brad. But what I think is the norm, or what will become the norm, is to utilize it in some way, shape, or form. But that might be in a very micro area in comparison to a macro area. So an example of that is we have lots of MSP partners that at the moment have no intention of changing the way they do things Monday to Friday. But they do utilize a bit of outsourcing so that they can provide 24/7 assistance to their customers and those overflow things in a cost-effective and service-focused manner. So agree with Brad, don't think it will be the norm in terms of core business, but definitely will become more and more of the norm as something to be able to offer peripheral things or the add-on services maybe that people are starting to need to be adding into their portfolio.
Yeah. So that's almost all the time we have for this episode of Tubb Talk Live. Before we do run out of time, Jason, Brad, I just want to turn over to you. Give us a final shout out for Uptime Live, September 17th in London, and any closing thoughts that you have based on this conversation, because we've covered a lot, and I know I've put you on the spot a lot. I like to have fun with you both, ask you questions from out there, but you've stood up and answered everything that we've put out there. But any final thoughts as we close up?
Jason, you want to go first?
I can go first. Absolutely. Final thoughts. Know that all of this comes from a place of wanting the industry to be better. The industry's always been good to myself and Brad. It's the reason we have a thriving business alongside our determination. So this comes from a good place, not necessarily just a biased outsourcing mindset. If you are in the UK listening to this, I would urge you to think about what you're doing next Tuesday. If I could grab you through the screen, shake you and show you the agenda, I would. I do really think it is a day of value that is worthwhile of your precious time, because everyone's time is precious. But otherwise, I would just encourage you, if you could take one thing away from this session, there is an Uptime Live ticket. Think about just trying to be the best business owner you can be for your goals. I think that's all we can be when it boils down to it. Trends will happen, they'll come and go. But as long as you believe you're doing the best thing for your business and not your ego, I think we can all be proud of what we're achieving.
Yeah, you're doing great work. Bradley, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, my final thought would be put yourself in a position where you look at business problems rather than getting stuck in the tech. If tech is your safe space and it's where you move to, as Jason alluded to earlier, we in our early days had a mainstream competitor, a global competitor that wasn't necessarily doing anything better than us. They were just better at selling it. You're not necessarily going to win in a business sense by delivering the absolute best tech. So maybe rather than focusing in trying to make it better, just move forward with what you've got, but look at the business side of things and make sure you're making those decisions from a business angle as opposed to always losing yourself in the tech.
Love it. That is all the time we have for this episode of Tubb Talk Live. I want to give a big shout out, actually, not only to Brad and Jason, who I'll thank again in a moment, but to our partners, DW Media, who made this episode possible. So if you're a technology business looking to host a live streamed or in-person event, then Mark and the team at DW Media are the experts who will make your event great. So Mark is behind the camera. Thank you, mate. Appreciate you. And
the music
thanks again.
behind the scenes.
What was that? Sorry, Jason?
The music DW Media had behind the scenes was getting me going.
I think
so
you should
I would recommend
hire Mark
them
as the
well.
DJ for Uptime Live next week. I think that wouldn't be if there's any money in the coffers there for that one. So no, but thank you, Mark and team. Appreciate it. And thanks again to our guests, Bradley Munday and Jason Kemsley of Uptime, for being with us today, and for you for joining us at home. And Brad, Jason, I'm going to say publicly, when I asked you to do this session, the week before your big live event, I know you are running around like crazy, not only running Uptime, looking after all the MSPs, but also setting up Uptime Live for next week. So I really do appreciate you coming on and doing this, taking an hour out of your day to be grilled by me and by our audience just before a live event. It speaks very, very highly to you. So thank you both. Appreciate it.
It's always fun. Thank you for having us.
We hope to see you at Uptime Live in London, September 17. Tickets are still available for you to join us. Team Tubb will be there. Of course, Jason and Bradley will be there. Levi Roots is going to be there. And we've just found out the bombshell, my biggest takeaway from this, there's going to be arcade machines. So if you want to have a go at beating me at top floor on Pac-Man, come and find me. We will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Tubb Talk, the podcast for managed service providers. That's all we've got for today. Take it easy, team.